All luxury hotels are fully booked," my mom bragged, clinking her champagne glass while my sister smirked. To them, I was the failure too busy chasing budget hotels to be invited. I didn't argue. I just pulled out my phone. Margaret, cancel the Whitmore family's presidential suite. Effective immediately. My dad's face went pale as the screens lit up with breaking news. My company, Elite Hotels, had just taken ownership of every 5-star property in Aspen. And trust me, that was only the beginning. Before I dive in, hit like and tell me where you're watching from your stories. Remind me I'm not alone. I'm Claire Whitmore, 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, Christmas with my family has never really been about love or togetherness. It was about appearances, about the kind of photos that ended up in glossy magazines or on my sister Maline's social feed, framed in perfect light with captions like "Family Goals," "The Truth." Those pictures were staged. Behind every smiling face was a knife, usually pointed at me. I grew up in a house where success was defined in one narrow way, my father's way. He built a real estate empire out of sheer grit and money. He measured worth in square footage and property value. My mother learned to echo his words, and Maline, my older sister, became their perfect protege. She wore their approval like a crown floating through every holiday dressed in designer gowns, while the spotlight fell squarely on her. Me, I was the afterthought, the one who didn't follow the plan. When I left to study hospitality instead of business development, my father shook his head like I'd just burned down the family name. "Hotels are service, Claire. Service is beneath us," he told me once, a glass of scotch sweating in his hand. My mother agreed, and Maline made sure to remind me every chance she got. But I stayed quiet. I watched. I worked. I let them believe I was barely scraping by, managing what they called budget hotels, as if I were wasting my life making beds and folding towels. They didn't know that those so-called budget hotels were the foundation of something much bigger. They didn't know the hours I spent in airport lounges, with contracts spread out in front of me, or the nights I worked through Christmas Eve, drawing up acquisition plans while they clinked glasses and sang carols. And here's the thing about being underestimated: it hurts, yes, but it also gives you cover. They never suspected me because they never respected me. That December night at Aspen Lodge wasn't just another family gathering. It was their stage, the Whitmore's annual spectacle where guests drove in from Denver and Vail just to be seen. Maline had orchestrated the decor down to imported pine garlands and crystal flutes etched with our crest. My name wasn't on the guest list, of course. Why would it be? In their eyes, I didn't belong in the glow of chandeliers or by the crackling fire. But standing there in the lobby watching the snow swirl against the glass, I knew something they didn't. In less than an hour, the entire script of our family Christmas would flip upside down. The Aspen Lodge glittered that night like a snow globe come to life. Strings of golden lights looped across the vaulted beams, and a choir sang carols near the fireplace. From the shadows of the grand lobby, I watched my family move as if they owned the place. My mother waved off staff with a sharp flick of her hand, never once offering so much as a thank you. Maline floated in wearing a gown the color of champagne, her designer scarf draped, just so, whispering to cousins about how stressful it was to coordinate an event of this magnitude. No one noticed me. That was the story of my life. I heard Aunt Sarah ask casually, "Did you hear from Claire?" She was pouring herself eggnog, maybe expecting to hear I was running late. My mother's reply cut sharper than any winter wind. "Oh, she won't be joining us. Every hotel is fully booked. Honestly, she should have reserved a room months ago." Laughter, smiles, a toast raised in mock sympathy. My sister leaned in, lowering her voice, but not enough to hide the venom. Still chasing her little hotel project, she said, savoring the words like candy, "Imagine spending Christmas in some roadside motel." I stayed rooted to the marble floor, the phone heavy in my palm. The irony almost made me laugh. For 5 years, I had lived behind the mask of hospitality consulting, letting them assume I was piecing together a modest career. What they never knew was that the mask hid an empire elite hotels, the most ambitious, luxury hospitality group in the world. Property by property, I had built it in silence, using shell companies to hide my name. While they mocked me, I was signing billion-dollar contracts. But old wounds still ached. My father's voice from years ago echoed in my head, real estate builds legacies. Hotels serve coffee. The disgust in his eyes was the same one he used on bellboys who dared to open his car door too slowly. That night at Aspen, the same disdain painted his features as he raised a glass of scotch. "At least Claire is employed," he muttered, as if that were some consolation prize. Though managing budget hotels is hardly a career, I felt something shift inside me then, a line snapping. For years I had kept my head down, waiting, building, letting their ignorance be my armor. But standing there, wrapped in pine-scented air and the sound of their laughter, I realized I didn't want armor anymore. I wanted the truth laid bare, and I had the perfect stage. Because while they toasted to my absence, my phone buzzed again. One more confirmation from my legal team, the transfer of Aspen Lodge. Their crown jewel, their stage, would finalize at midnight. They thought I was invisible, but in a matter of minutes, I would step out of the shadows, and for the first time, they'd have no choice but to see me. Midnight came quietly like a secret only I knew. Snow drifted across the windows, muffling the sound of the carolers outside. Inside the Aspen Lodge ballroom, my family basked in their own glow firelight champagne applause from friends who believed the Whitmores defined success. I let them enjoy it for one last moment. Then I stepped forward. My heels struck the marble floor sharp enough to turn heads. Conversations faltered. My mother's eyes widened as if she'd seen a ghost. "Claire," she gasped, "how did you get in here? I didn't bother with pleasantries." I lifted my phone voice, calm and deliberate. "Margaret," I said, "cancel the Whitmore family's presidential suite, effective immediately." The silence was deafening. My father lowered his glass, confusion and irritation darkening his face. "What is this nonsense?" he demanded. Malene's laugh came out shaky, forced. "She's joking," she told the cousins, though, her knuckles whitened against her glass. But then the lobby screens flickered alive, pulling every gaze in the room. Breaking news banners glowed across the flat screens. Elite Hotels acquires Aspen Lodge and 20 luxury properties worldwide. A photo appeared me standing before one of my flagship hotels, name bold beneath the headline Claire Whitmore, CEO and founder of Elite Hotels. My father's scotch slipped from his fingers, crashing against the floor. My mother's perfect smile collapsed into shock. Malene fumbled with her phone, scrolling through headline after headline, each one worse than the last. "All luxury hotels are fully booked," she whispered, as if trying to rewrite reality. "Not anymore," I answered, "because I own them." Every five-star property in Aspen now operates under Elite Hotels. The room erupted in murmurs. Guests who had once sneered at me now stared with a mix of awe and unease. My family stood frozen in the center, exposed under the glittering lights of the Christmas they had thought belonged to them. I met my father's eyes, steady and unflinching. "You said hotels don't build legacies. You were wrong." It wasn't anger that filled me in that moment, it was clarity. Years of ridicule, dismissal, exclusion, all leading to this night. My counterattack wasn't a shout or a fight. It was simple, undeniable truth displayed for the entire world to see. The Whitmore family's perfect holiday collapsed in an instant. And for the first time, I wasn't the one left standing in the shadows. The room felt colder, though the fire roared behind the iron grate. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, but every eye was locked on me. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. My mother clutched her pearls, her painted nails trembling. My father's jaw clenched so hard I thought the glass in his hand might shatter. And Malene, my flawless sister, looked as though she'd been stripped bare in front of the entire ballroom. I let the silence stretch. Let them feel it. Then my phone buzzed again. Another notification flashed across the lobby screens, Elite Hotels stock surges on $8 billion Aspen acquisition. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some of the Whitmore's oldest friends, business partners, neighbors, society figures turned their heads away from my parents, suddenly embarrassed to be standing beside them. My father finally broke the silence. "This is absurd," he growled. "You can't possibly— I cut in my voice sharper than I expected, and I did. At midnight, the Aspen Lodge became elite property, along with every luxury resort in town. You mocked me for years, called me a failure for managing hotels. But tonight you'll sleep in a roadside motel while the world sees me for what I am, the woman who built an empire you couldn't even imagine." Maline's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, the crash echoing through the ballroom. She scrambled for her phone, scrolling frantically, her lips moving as she read the headlines. No, this can't be— "It is," I said, stepping closer. "And every guest in this lodge now answers to my company. That means your suite, your annual Christmas throne no longer belongs to you." My mother's voice cracked. "Claire, you can't do this. It's Christmas." I almost laughed. "You never cared if I was alone on Christmas. You never noticed when I spent holidays working, saving, building. Why should tonight be any different? Actions have consequences." The murmur of guests grew louder. A senator whispered into his wife's ear, reporters scrambled to get video footage, and the local mayor appeared at the edge of the room, stunned, as if history had just rerouted itself before his eyes. I turned back to my family. "You said service is beneath us. That hotels aren't real business. Tell me, how does it feel now, knowing the people you treated as invisible now stand above you?" My father's face flushed crimson. He stepped forward, pointing at me like he had authority. "You ungrateful," I didn't let him finish. I raised my phone again. "Security escort the Whitmore family from the presidential suite. Effective immediately." Gasps, murmurs. The music faltered. Then 2 elite staff members in immaculate uniforms stepped through the crowd. They didn't hesitate. They'd been briefed. And in that moment, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The daughter, once excluded from family Christmas, now had the power to exclude her own parents and sister. My mother sputtered. "You can't possibly mean— "Oh, I do," I said calmly. "Because Elite Hotels has a strict policy. Guests who disrespect hospitality staff are permanently blacklisted. And you, every single one of you, qualify." The words landed like a hammer blow. My sister lunged toward me, her perfect facade cracking. "Claire, please," she begged, her voice thin. "We didn't know. If we had known, we would have." I held her gaze, remembering every snide remark, every smirk when I walked into a room, every Christmas I spent alone because my family thought I wasn't worth an invitation. "That's exactly the point," I said. "You didn't know, because you never cared to look past your own reflection." Behind me, the screen cycled through images of elite properties. Beachfront villas in Bali, glass towers in New York, snow-covered chalets in Switzerland. My name glowed beneath every headline. I walked to the center of the room, feeling the weight of every stare. 5 years ago, you told me I was wasting my time, that managing hotels was beneath a Whitmore. You mocked me, excluded me, treated me like nothing. Tonight you will leave this lodge as guests with no room, no power, no standing. And tomorrow, the world will know exactly why. The security team waited at the edge of the ballroom, eyes steady. My father glanced around, realizing no ally would step forward. Even his oldest partners were already recalculating loyalties, eager to curry favor with me instead. He tried one last time. "Princess," he said softly, using the nickname he hadn't called me in years. His voice wavered. We didn't know. I looked at him, the man who taught me to measure worth in property deeds and bottom lines. "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You never wanted to know." The carolers outside began another song, their voices faint but clear. Inside, my family stood shattered in the middle of their perfect Christmas. Guests whispered, phones flashed, reporters scribbled notes. The Whitmores, once untouchable, had been brought down not by rivals or bad investments, but by the daughter they dismissed. I turned to security and nodded. Show them to the Mountain View Motel. It's the only accommodation left during peak season. The humiliation was total. Malene gasped. My mother looked like she might faint. My father's shoulders sagged, years of pride collapsing under the weight of reality. As they were led toward the exit, I called out, my voice carrying through the room. And Malene, next time you laugh at someone in hospitality, remember this. They might just own the building. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, but in applause. Not for them. For me. I stood there in the glow of the chandeliers, finally seen, finally heard. And for the first time in my life, Christmas belonged to me. But as satisfying as it was, I knew this was only the beginning. My family's downfall had just begun. The morning after felt like stepping into a new world. Snow blanketed the mountains in silence, but inside Aspen Lodge, everything buzzed with life. Reporters camped outside news crews, filmed the decorated lobby, and guests approached my staff with curiosity, eager to say they had been there the night history was made. I sat in my new office on the top floor overlooking the peaks I had claimed not just as a view, but as a legacy. My phone lit up. Non-stop calls from investors, messages from heads of state, offers I never imagined I'd receive. Overnight, Claire Whitmore wasn't the family disappointment anymore. I was the face of a hospitality empire worth billions. Meanwhile, my family had spent Christmas Eve in the Mountain View Motel, stripped of the suite they once flaunted. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, they mocked the very industry that now controlled their fate. And now, for the first time, they felt what it was like to be on the other side of that disdain. But revenge wasn't the whole story. It never was. This was about justice, about finally proving that respect matters more than appearances. I thought of the housekeepers, the bellhops, the front desk clerks who built elite hotels alongside me. They weren't invisible. Neither was I. For my family, the fallout had just begun. For me, the future was wide open, and this time I was holding the keys. In the end, I learned something simple. Family can betray you, dismiss you, even erase you from their table, but their rejection doesn't define your worth. Respect, dignity, and persistence do. My parents, my sister, they lost their Christmas throne because they never saw the people who made it possible. I built my own empire on those very people, and it saved me. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment below. Tell me if you've ever had to fight for respect in your own family. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support reminds me I'm not alone.